Cheers, Greg DeSantis. Greg was here, did he leave? Yeah, he left. But I want to thank him and Bob Brown for putting the conference together. I also want to thank Barbara Richards in her role as Vice Chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee. Barbara, I don't know how she does it. She's a full-time faculty member. She drives everywhere. She's always present, advocating for the faculty. She's just terrific, and I'm very grateful to her for encouraging me to give this session. I also, my colleagues from the system office, the provost is here, Estella, raise your hand so they know who the big boss is.
She's inviting me to have a beer.
And Bill Gamble is here, who's the Director of Institutional Research, who worked at Eastern and understands the model that I'll be presenting you, and actually had a lot of good intellectual contribution to give to the models. Bill, raise your hand so they know who you are. Anybody else from the system office here that I missed? Oh, and how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
Oh, Assistant Counsel.
Assistant Counsel, thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. And Arthur Poole, there you are. Arthur quiet in the corner. And Arthur Poole is in the Office of Academic Affairs also, who has been there for a long time and has done very good work. And there's your president. Paul, how are you?
How are you?
Welcome everybody. Finally, I want to thank Housatonic Community College, especially the president, for hosting today's conference. It's a wonderful institution. It's a beautiful building, and it's wonderful that our students in this part of Connecticut have this resource. And I know how hard you work to retain your students and to graduate them. So this discussion about retention and graduation is really important. I want to talk today about Eastern Connecticut State University using a predictive modeling and data analysis to enhance student success and improve graduation rates on campus. I'm reading my presentation because time is very short, and if I speak, it lengthens it and I won't get everything in. And there's a lot about Eastern and the mistakes we've made and how we got to this model. I've been president now almost 11 years, and it's not my model, it's an institutional model where a lot of smart faculty and staff came together as a result of a Nellie Mae grant that we got for $3 million. And that $3 million grant, Bill Gamble worked on that, allowed us to think more systematically about retention and graduation rates. The important fact to know is that up until that point, we were doing all the traditional things that an institution does. If a student, Elsa, comes to Housatonic and she's poor and she's got an attainment gap and she has 2 children and is a single mother, we put her in the highest risk category. And the question we raised at Eastern was, with those variables, is that the right placement? Because we don't have enough resources to give everybody everything. So we need to know where the most vulnerable students are in terms of retention and put the resources in those tacks, and the ones who don't need them, put them in other tacks. However, before I share our Eastern story with you, I think it's important to make clear what higher education professionals are up against. The students who get to our campuses, the four-year schools as well as the community colleges, come from economically disadvantaged families, and neighborhoods are not ready to succeed in college in the same way that affluent, well-prepared students they sit next to in class are ready to succeed. We need to go back to when those students were infants to really appreciate the challenges they continue to face. I want to share just a little bit of research to put all this in context that astounds me every time I use it, because it's both obvious and tragic in its simplicity. National Assessment of Education Progress data shows that at 9 months of age, all babies in this country have the same mental acuity or intellectual ability, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of race, regardless of where you live. The educational level of the mother, whether or not the mother's married, whether or not the income level of the mother is poor or middle class, all babies in this country up till 9 months are born and live equally. They succeed. The same NAEP report, however, shows that family income and circumstances soon begin to impact a child. By age 2, the low-income children are falling behind. By age 4, the differences are even more noticeable, with as much as 1 year gap in mental functioning. Without the stimulation of books being read in the home, with issues of nutrition, family literacy entering the mix, and with the host of other socioeconomic factors that put urban minority and low-income families at risk, the children of those families have a hard time succeeding in school. Across the country, students from our urban core, students of color, students from economically disadvantaged student families, and that can be white families as well, and students who are first-generation college students are statistically at risk of dropping out of high school, not attending or completing college, and/or falling below the poverty line. This is true throughout the country, and it is reflected in the National Assessment of Educational Progress test, which show that these various at-risk populations consistently achieve test scores below their white, suburban, affluent peers. All of us in this room and others have come to know this as the achievement gap in this country. The chart shows data from math, reading, and writing testing in the 8th grade. Look at those scores. Testing also occurs in the 4th and 12th grade. Note that Hispanic and African American students perform lower in all subject areas. This is national data. This is true in the 4th and 12th grade as well, and also parallels comparisons of urban versus suburban students and various income levels. What is particularly disturbing, and it continues to be the focus of school boards across our nation, is the reality that the achievement gap grows over time. So you would think it's almost counterintuitive. The longer you're in school, the better you'll do, and it's the opposite. The longer you're in school, the gap widens. The longer students come from economically disadvantaged homes stay in school, the worse their academic performance. It is really, really sad. Rather than helping close the gap, current educational policies and practice appear to be doing more harm than good. Look at this graph showing the growth in the gap between white students and Latino and African American students from the 4th to the 8th grade in mathematics. It breaks your heart. Anybody who knows anything about STEM will tell you there's no doctor in that group of African American and Hispanic students. What I want to stress here, and the data supports it, is that family income, not ethnicity or race, is the chief determinant of academic progress. For instance, here is a slide that dramatically shows the difference in high school dropout rates based on income. Poor students are more than 5 times as likely to drop out as their affluent counterparts. The same difference shows up later on in terms of college graduation rates. Almost 60% of the most affluent students graduate from college within 6 years. You and I know that to be true. For students from the poorest families, that rate drops to less than 10% of students who begin college. So let's take all this data and bring it down to the experiences of college freshmen who are not ready for the academic rigors of college level work. They come to your campus, they come to mine, lucky to have survived their neighborhoods, fortunate to have graduated from high school, or earned a GED for that matter, and thankful for a chance to succeed in college. They come with such hope and such promise, and they inspire us. But they're not ready to succeed. And national data shows that college students are at the greatest risk of dropping out during the first 6 weeks of their academic semester. If they have a bad experience, or if they feel they don't fit in the first weeks, it's over. It's over. Identification and support of these at-risk students has to occur early in their college career if they're going to succeed. That data point about the first 6 weeks transformed everything that we do at Eastern. Given the reality that many students come to our campus ill-prepared for success, we examined our support services at Eastern and realized they needed to be improved to identify and support at-risk students. The review was the first year of our 2008-13 strategic plan, the second year of my presidency. I've been president almost 11 years, so this began very early. It was identified by the faculty and the staff as one of the major areas. If we were going to play in the big league with respectable 4-year institutions, we had to get our act together. We have made much progress since then, and I would like to share that with you. Our improvement model at Eastern has been grounded in 2 realizations. We needed to improve the academic support services we provide students, and we needed to have a much clearer idea of the skill deficits of entering students so that we could better match their needs to our services. As I said earlier, we're not a rich institution. I can't give everybody maximum tutoring, maximum advisement, maximum everything. We just don't have those resources. So the question for me was a strategic one. As president, if I'm going to invest in students and their support services, where does the dollar best fit, and where do I get a bang for that buck, as we say in that cliche. We looked at our services, we found that our students were not satisfied with advisement. If you don't use NESI data, how many use NESI data? Talk to your administration. I love my NESI data. It's run out of the University of Indiana. It's a test that's given, a survey rather, given to freshmen and to seniors only. And they ask a series of questions, and those series of questions that the students answer are the things that the faculty and I especially, and the staff, talk about. So I enlisted one of my senior faculty members and said to him, Peter, help me, look at this data. Look at it, he's a scientist, look at this data. And he said, it's astounding. The students kept saying over and over, my brother advises me, my cousin advises me, nobody advises me. And I hate advisement at Eastern. They even use the word sucks. It sucks. To put their point across. And we knew then that advisement was a problem at Eastern. We took that data to the faculty and to the Senate and said, can we have a discussion about hiring professional advisors? Up until that point, the faculty was not open to that suggestion. And over and over and over in the discussions with the NESI data, the faculty began to see that there was an issue. Interestingly enough, now when I read the NESI data, I read it every single year as president. Freshmen say this and the seniors say this. They're not the same people, but they're freshmen and seniors. They always tell me now, we love advisement and advisement is great at Eastern. So after 10 years of working on it, based on the data, and what I find about faculty especially is they're very smart. If you show them the data, they respond. What they don't want is for you to talk about things in an abstraction or just from an impressionistic point of view to change a system. But once they had the data, they were very, very interested in strengthening advisement. We realized we needed to do much better in identifying at-risk students even before they enrolled. We needed to bring our academic support services under one roof. We needed to support faculty advising through professional development. The title of my remarks is Success Starts with Knowing Your Students. I really, really believe that's true. And I believe for the most part, institutions don't take the time to really understand who comes to their institution. Even as we were improving academic support services on our campus, we knew we also needed to improve the way we gather and analyze data about our students to help match their needs, to improve the services we were committed to provide. We don't make any decisions at Eastern unless people have the data to support their claim. You can make any claim at Eastern. Unless you have the data, people don't pay attention to it. The ultimate goal was to improve retention and graduation rates among our most at-risk population, as well as seeing an overall improvement among our students on those two metrics. This chart is a lot to absorb, so I'll do my best to summarize. In the middle of our commitment to student success, our services directly related to academic success, tutoring, advising, and related services like supplemental instruction were at the heart of the matter. This is the middle circle colored in purple on this chart. The middle circle in blue are all of our student affairs offices and academic departments. This is our way of saying supporting student success and being accountable to our retention and graduation goals is a campus-wide job. It's everybody's responsibility at Eastern, not just one department or one segment of the faculty or one office in student affairs. The outer circle is yellow. In yellow represents some of our triage services for high-risk behaviors, drug and alcohol abuse, counseling, personal counseling, and health services. You will also see student clubs in that outer circle. They play a critical role in retention. National data, as well as our own experience, has shown that engaging students through student clubs and other academic life activities improves retention and graduation rates. We could not have moved Eastern ahead on our model for student success without outside financial support. So we used a 4-year Project Compass grant from the Nellie Mae Foundation, which was $3 million, to begin to jumpstart the process and to really understand what was going on at Eastern. What attracted Nellie Mae to Eastern and the proposal that we submitted was that we were interested in developing an analytical model, and they were interested in having that analytical model built so that they could share it with other institutions. The result of this grant support was the development of our Academic Services Center, which we created on the ground floor of the library. If you could come to Eastern, you come through the door, you get a cup of coffee at a cafe, you keep walking and get tutored, you cross the hall and get advised, you go upstairs and book a room so that you can study with your friends. Think about it. Think about it. It is so easy for them to succeed because it's all very much connected and it's very visible and there's no stigma. The smart students who want to go into biology, who are in biology, want to go to medical school are there, as well as the students who may not be passing English 100. The result of all this grant support was the development of this center. It houses, as I said, advising, tutoring, math, writing labs, supplemental instruction. We pay people with PhDs to reteach the course. We've got killer courses. I call them killer courses. Courses where I can't convince the faculty members to do anything differently. They're tenured full professors or associate professors. They'll be there until they decide to leave Eastern or they retire. But I know that my students can't get through the sequences because of those killer courses. So what we do is have an entire operation that basically reteaches the material through supplemental instruction, and they're wonderful, wonderful faculty members who do that. And special academic services and programs. Today it serves more than 3,000 students a year with more than 12,000 annual visits. We use professional and faculty advisors as well as faculty and student peer tutors. Our research as well as the student feedback also prescribed a new advising system that combines faculty with professional advisors. And the faculty love the professional advisors respect and really, really love working with the faculty. And they divided the territory. And that's really why there's no conflict. The faculty understand that students come in without direction, and that's not appropriate for them to advise those students because they have a hard time giving the direction to the students. On the other hand, when a student has declared a major, a general advisor is not the best person to advise them. Our research as well as student feedback also prescribed a new advising system, and this is the one that I just mentioned that combines faculty and professional expertise, creating advising stages through a student's college career. So it's not just advisement for a course to get into a course or advisement to sign up for next semester, it is stage advisement. We now have a 4-tiered advising system composed of faculty and professional staff advisement, and the stages are called pre-enrollment, major selection, first year, and career development advisement. We also created an early warning system, but it's based on a team approach of the housing staff, people in the dormitories, support services staff, and faculty to identify at-risk students early on in their first year, particularly in the first month of their freshman year. Whether it's a resident assistant noticing erratic behavior in the dorms, a professor documenting a student missing more than one class, or other warning signs, our notification system is phenomenal. It allows one person on a team to trigger an alert to the members of the team and all hands on deck at that moment so that the appropriate interventions and support can be made available. The literature and our own experience tells us that students of color perform better when they see their own cultures and heritage reflected in the faculty ranks. With changing demographics, bringing more ethnic minorities to our campus, it was critical that we hire more minority faculty. At the same time, we know that having a diverse faculty is good for everyone. It's good for the students, it's good for the administration, and it's good certainly for the entire community. Promoting the global perspective and respect for other cultures that is needed in today's world. Through extra efforts to expand search pools and proactive hiring practices, talking to chairs of departments for newly minted PhDs, I'm proud to tell you that Eastern has the highest percentage of minority faculty of any college or university in Connecticut, including UConn and Yale. It's taken a lot of work, and that was started before my presidency with Dr. Carter, who was the former president. We have also dramatically increased the sophistication of our data collection and analysis using multiple variables to predict students who are academically at risk and match them to the appropriate support services. Know your students. Make this a priority on your own campus. If you do, you can start to feel confident about implementing the right corrective interventions for each student. One major aspect of this development of our data system was the creation of TACs, or targeted advising cohorts. Based on where a student falls into the 4 quadrants, We initiate interventions ranging from simply monitoring progress to intensive tutoring support. Simply monitoring progress costs me nothing, and they're in that tact, unless the team says that someone in that tact has a problem and they get moved to another tact. And yet, the people who are in the tact that says they really need intensive supplemental instruction and tutoring is the highly costly tact. Here's a list of the various variables we're using to identify at risk. While I won't read them all, they vary from student's GPA to whether or not he or she is a student athlete, has an undeclared major, commutes to school, socioeconomic factor, ethnicity, family income, and whether or not a student is first in their family to attend college are also included. So the idea that a student who's of a color, comes from Hartford, is from a poor family, and has an attainment gap, that they should be put into the highest risk tact is an assumption that you shouldn't make. What we've learned is that if you can discover the standalone fact for motivation, or a stand-in variable for motivation, you can actually better understand how your students are doing. At Eastern, we know that if you don't go to library orientation, which is not, it's not required, it's suggested, but we know, and we use it as a stand-in for motivation. You could be my daughter or son for an upper middle class family, gone to a very good high school and ready to go to college without an attainment gap, and you should be in TAC 1. Because that means if you don't go to library orientation when you're told in the first 2 weeks of classes, you're probably at risk for leaving Eastern. It's amazing that the motivational factor is the factor that you and I have not been able to identify early enough among our students. This chart also shows different variables that impact retention, credit accumulation, GPAs, and other success measures. The point here is that we realized we needed to take the time to systematically assess the impact of multiple measures on the advising cohorts we had created. I think everyone in this room is dealing with the economics and public sentiment around the fact that it's taking a four-year college student an average of 4.7 years, or sometimes 5.6 years to graduate from college. Our own research suggests, and I use this at freshman orientation to parents, that a student will lose about $75,000 a year to attend additional year of college. That's what it would cost, because it's loss of income, tuition, fees, interest on loans, etc. That loan interest, living costs, delayed earnings, and economic factors is what brought us to say to the students, if you don't graduate in 4 years from Eastern, it's going to cost you $75,000. Their eyes open up very big, and their parents go like this at orientation. And we measured our own 4-year graduation rates. How can we help students graduate in 4? At Eastern, we have created an Eastern in 4. It's a big campaign from the first day you walk in. We give you a special ribbon at graduation if you graduated in 4 years, and mostly everyone has the ribbon. It's prestigious to graduate in 4 years. It's like a thing everybody wants to do. It's shishi now in Eastern to graduate in 4 years. The program is also proactively removing barriers to course completion. The faculty's been wonderful in analyzing the curriculum and seeing where the courses are, because the students tell us this isn't offered in the right sequence, or this wasn't offered, and the faculty responds to that, particularly the chairs of the departments. The program is also working very closely and removing barriers of completion, as well as replacing undeclared status with a set of 5 exploratory tracks. So we've eliminated undeclared. Remember when I was in college, it was undeclared. That word isn't used at Eastern, and we give you the opportunity to select one of 5 exploratory tracks. And in advisement, we say to the students, what do you like to do? And that's what puts them in the exploratory track, not a major. They're not ready to declare a major. You'd be surprised. Most of them stay in the exploratory track, or they find out they really didn't like that and they change to another exploratory track, or even declare a major. So what have we learned through implementation of our student success model? We knew going in, and we have reaffirmed, that retention must be a campus-wide commitment. You cannot succeed by creating a single retention office. That's a real mistake. Those realizations have been supported by quantitative measures. A little over 3 years ago, I got an email from Education Trust. I had forgotten that I had signed a document saying that I would participate in a national study, and there were almost 5,000 institutions in the country that were participating. The email said that Eastern ranked #1 in the national study, and the improvement of the 6-year graduation rate for Latinos and 6th for African American students. I thought it was spam. I sent it to IT. This is impossible. And he check, and he said, no, it really did come from education. I thought it was spam, and I called him and I said, I got this email, and I think you made a mistake. It may be Eastern Washington. And he said, no, Elsa, it's Eastern. The chart shows that the 6-year graduation rate of Latino students at Eastern almost tripled with the model that I've just explained to you. And for blacks, it also tripled. 20% in 2004 to almost 60% in 2010. So the reason I wanted to do this presentation was everybody can do it. Everybody can get to those numbers. It's hard work, but everybody. We can have the best system in the world together if we all work on the variables that I described. The chart compares Eastern's progress to all public institutions and all 4-year institutions. We outperformed other schools in this survey 10-1. I would like to think this is an indication of the success any college or university can have when it takes a systematic, thoughtful, and data-centric approach to its work. In addition to the dramatic improvement of student success among our Hispanic and Black students, we have seen other upticks in success measures. 40% of our students are taking advantage of the Academic Services Center. That's huge. 40% of the students just go in like it's nothing. There's no stigma attached. We are well on our way to achieving our goal of 100% of our freshmen with a 4-year academic plan and a declared major by their sophomore year. That number's now in the high 80s. Our 4- and 6-year graduation rates are at all-time highs. They're the highest among the 4 state universities. We continue to use data and anecdotal experience to help us improve our systems and processes so that our student it's not just a short-term basis, but instead it is institutionalized and leads to long-term gains in student learning. I want you to think of what I have shared with you so far, a systematic, quantitative approach as we have used to knowing our students, because we're getting used to that now at Eastern, and responding to their needs in terms of cohorts, groups, or students with similar needs. But the fact is, we also realized in our inner cities, among the urban poor, and for many minority families, each student's circumstances is complex. Family, neighborhood, culture, high school. Every corner of a person's life impacts them in a dynamic fashion, and each student reacts differently to academic support interventions. We have learned that the academic measures alone do not give us all the information we need to assess students' progress and ability to learn. Emotional well-being, and I just wrote a paper on identity. There's a book coming out, which I think is fabulous, on issues of wellness and issues of people's well-being. And I wrote this paper on identity because I really feel that we don't do enough at our colleges and universities to support students in finding their identity in college. Emotional well-being, motivation, and other psychological factors must be understood. I encourage members of the audience to examine the area of educational literature dealing with resilient students to learn more about at-risk students, especially those from the inner city or economically disadvantaged backgrounds, and how they deal with change in the environment. I can get you those references if you're interested after the presentation. One project we have great success with in terms of supporting inner city students as they adjust to campus life is our dual college enrollment program. Our faculty is very strict about the standards for admission. We have high SAT scores. We just hit the 12% of our students are in the top 10% of the graduating class. More than 40% of the students at Eastern in the top 25% of their graduating class. And so the faculty is very strict about not moving those variables around, those admission variables. And so when I wanted to address issues of access at Eastern and make sure that the mix of students was appropriate for a state university, I knew that the way we were going, we would become very easily a predominantly white institution. And I didn't want that as president. My faculty didn't want that either. So we're in the 9th cohort of a special program called the Dual Enrollment Program. Since its inception, the key to the program has been to find high school students who are at risk. I went to Hartford High School by myself. I didn't tell anyone I was going. It wasn't on my calendar. I called the guidance counselor, the head of guidance at the high school, and asked him if I could meet with him, and he said yes. When I got there, he was shaking. He didn't know what the hell I wanted. And I just passed the principal, the superintendent. I didn't talk to any of those people. And I had a cup of coffee with him, and I said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "If I asked you to identify smart kids in this high school who life has given them a bad hand, right? They're victims of incest. There are 15 people living in an apartment because they're all immigrants, right? Their mother's a drug addict. Their father shot somebody in a gas station and is incarcerated. Whatever the circumstances are, they've got the bad hand. Could you identify smart people?" And the guidance counselor said, "Of course, the high school is filled with kids like that." And so what happened was that we began at Eastern to have a special cohort of students come to Eastern through Quinebaug Community College. And that's why I have such respect for my colleagues at the community colleges. What they do, we can't do as well at Eastern. And we knew that. And so we said to them, if we identify a cohort of students who scratched their way, held on like this for 4 years to graduate, they barely got a C or a D+. But they graduated. Nobody wants them. Yale doesn't want them, Harvard doesn't want them, Eastern doesn't want them, right? We all want the best kids. Could you take them and give them the remediation that they need? And when your faculty signs off that they're ready, then they can come to Eastern. Our faculty signed off on the project, and so did the Quinebaug faculty. And then the Hartford Foundation, Estella was a member of the Hartford Foundation at that time, the Latino Endowment Fund rather, and they gave us money. I went to have lunch with a donor, and I asked the donor if she would give me money to pay for the kids to live in the dorms without being Eastern students. Legally, I can't do that. They can't live in my dorms without paying, and they can't pay because they're not my students. So it was and she basically said no. And about a month later, she called me back and said she would do it for the first cohort, and she was an anonymous donor. When I personally visited the counselors in 2007, Jeff Bartlett was the lead counselor, and he said yes. 2/3 of the students in the school were Latino and about 1/3 Black. 90% of the children at the school were living below the poverty level. This was where the battle for survival was being waged. Jeff and other counselors at the high school assured me they could find this cohort, and we started with 12 students. That's all I could afford. And then I convinced, as I said, the Quinebaug Valley Community College president and the faculty to help me partner, and they've been fabulous, fabulous partners since. In fall of 2008, we started the program with students living on my campus, taking 1 course at Eastern with a full professor and 3 to 4 remedial courses at Quinebaug. They are given work-study jobs on my campus because I don't believe in mentoring programs because it's too hard to get people together. What I did was give everybody a job on campus, and their boss is their mentor. So the librarian, who's the boss of one of the students, once said to me, "I don't know, she didn't come to work." And she called her immediately and said, "Why didn't you come to work?" And that has really helped the retention of these students. We also make sure that these students take full advantage of all the support student services that are available to them. They're placed in one of the TACs that I explained earlier with the other students. They get up in the morning, they take a shower, they live in my dorms, but they don't go to classes except for that 1 course. They walk down or take the bus to Quinebaug. And we provided the personal touch of the mentor, which I said was the boss at the job. It sounds like a well-thought-out program, but no, it wasn't. We pieced it together, doing what we thought was best for the kids, and we learned along the way. The first weekend that they were on campus, one of my administrators came to me and said, "Elsa, I don't know what we're going to do. We're leaving for the weekend. It's Labor Day weekend, and these kids have no money. They can't even get an ice cream cone. And the other kids are going to do so. What are we going to do?" And we all took out money from our pockets, and we gave them each a little bit of money for the weekend so that they could, get a hamburger or do something like a normal college kid would do. We hadn't thought it through because it was really hard to figure out how a new program like this could be implemented. I'm so proud of my faculty. I'm so proud of the staff on my campus who have gone the extra mile to give more than 200 students now who have moved through the program the personal attention they need to succeed. I'm grateful for the financial support we got from Walmart, believe it or not, Walmart, from the U.S. Department of Justice, and from the local foundations, and I said before, anonymous donors. Keep in mind that the students in this program come from violent neighborhoods, broken families, without any college graduates in their families. They serve as role models. One student told me when he came to campus, I said, "How you doing today?" He said, "Oh, President Nunez, yesterday somebody was shot and murdered on the corner." And he named the street where it had happened. He said, "I'm so glad I'm here." Many of the students are first-generation immigrants. Learning to speak English was just one of their many challenges. So for me to tell you that the program's at graduation is far above the overall figure for students graduating from Hartford Public High School is astounding. For me to tell you that we now have graduates of the program who have master's degrees in clinical psychology, they're social workers, and counseling is astounding. For me to describe other graduates working on family health outreach coordinators, human services specialists, they've gone to the University of Connecticut into the doctoral programs. This program reminds me of the importance of looking deeper into finding someone's potential, not just what they may be able to show on their paper, because that's the problem. A paper application would never have surfaced their potential and their grit, and that's what I wanted, students with grit. It also tells me that we have saved lives from the urban core with a systematic approach tempered by a personal touch. Keep in mind, it's not just their future we're talking about. Yes, the personal impact of education is enormous. Data shows us, and I showed you earlier, the negative data, but we could, when we educate these students, not only change their lives, but we provide an additional $8 billion a year. I said $8 billion. In personal income for all the people who graduated from Eastern. In addition to this personal benefit, keep in mind the social and economic benefits of an educated citizen's degree. Why does this metric matter? The Center for Education and Workforce at Georgetown University projects that 66% of the jobs in Connecticut over the next 10 years will need at least a 2-year degree. With changing demographics, you and I have a lot of work to do. I want to show you a video, quick video, and then we'll finish up. I realized that there were plenty of other young people who deserved that same opportunity. So, in 2008, we began a collaborative pilot for the dual college enrollment program among Eastern, Quinebaug Valley Community College, and Hartford Public High School.
Sophomore year of high school, I failed 5 classes straight. 5 classes all year long, straight. I was just going crazy. So, I got kicked out of my first high school. I went to summer school. First day, I got kicked out.
I've always known that I wanted to go to college. I just didn't know how I would get there and how would I be able to pay to stay there. It was the biggest puzzle piece that was needed to make my life the way I wanted it to be.
Hartford and Manchester are filled with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of really resilient high school students who, for a variety of reasons, don't do well on what we would call cognitive measures, test scores, grade point average.
So my guidance counselor one day, she came to me, she was like, listen, I have an opportunity for you. It's a dual enrollment process where you'll be at Eastern as a full-time student, but you'll be taking, you'll be part-time, you'll take 1 class here and 4 classes over there. I heard that immediately and I'm like, give it to me.
The students were admitted their first college experience is both living in the dorm, but they take their first semester courses in Quinebaug Valley Community College. And if they pass those classes with a grade point average of 2.0, to get that campus life and understand what it means to be a full-time college student.
When they are academically ready, they enroll full-time at Eastern. The key was getting students away from the inner city and onto our campus, where they could be integrated into college life.
Over 90% of our students are living at or below the poverty line.
There are too many financial barriers for young people who find themselves in certain economic circumstances. And when they find themselves in those circumstances, they're less likely to invest the time to get a college degree.
Many of them have very unstable family situations, a lot of dysfunction within the families. They come from neighborhoods that are violent, and not the kinds of place you want to be raising your children. So there are a lot of things that are, if they stay in the home environment, are going to be distractions that are going to be pulling them away from the opportunity that they might otherwise have to go to college.
I like it because, you know, it's like I don't have nobody on my back. I don't have to worry about somebody else's mess. I'm just worried about myself. This is what I've been wanting for a very, very, very long time.
This program allowed the students to have the academic counseling, the financial counseling, and other support services to encourage them and keep them in these programs.
There's a few of us who all studied. Being able to have someone to talk to is a big help. If you'd ask them how many times Whitney came to my office and said she was gonna drop out, they would tell you at least 10. I always was complaining, something was hard, I was ready to give up, I wanted to cry, they wouldn't let me.
What we're trying to identify as best we can is what students have that spark. What students show a level of maturity that says, I understand how important it is to get a 4-year education, and I'm going to work at it to make it happen. This program helps identify more of those kinds of leaders. It's going to pull more and more of those students in the right direction.
Graduation was amazing. Knowing for me that I wasn't too sure what type of college I would end up at, and to know that I finished was a great feeling.
I think it's the best thing I've happened in my life, to be honest. It's one of the best things that's ever happened. This is our market that we're providing. We have so many people, you know, here to support me. Yes, you know, I don't have the support system as much at home. And these people that have been there for me since day one when I got here, I love that so much. That is something that I cherish the most about being here for this program, is the ability to talk to these faculty members who are, you know, higher ups with masters and doctorate degrees, and being able to sit down and have a regular conversation about my life and how they can help me. Easton's a great place. I love it.
This is the pathway to change in our communities, making a difference one life at a time.
I don't know, I just feel like too many people may not know that it's really that big of a deal that they're doing for people. But every little small gesture that was made for the program really changed my life. And it may not have seemed that big of a deal, but it really was.
If you want to ask a question or make a comment, Estella.
Thank you for inspiring them, Elsa. You always do that. But I just wanted to mention that for the community college is CESI, the equivalent of CESI. And Bill Gamble is holding a workshop on CESI with them presenting next Friday at Gateway Community College.
If you look at that data, the kids tell you what's wrong. They actually tell you. We're doing focus groups, the faculty is doing focus groups at Eastern right now to find out what they hate about our freshman program. And they tell you, if you ask them, they will tell you, and that's the basis, that data was the basis for the major renovation at Eastern. Yes, Barbara?
Yeah, I just wanted, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. People are going to want details on this, and I want to let you know that Andrew Morris, the website person at GOR, has said he can put out any documents you want to put out as well as video, so people can get that stuff.
Yeah, we'll put the tax stuff is the most interesting.
People are nodding at each other. They're all turning 5 and saying, "Did you hear that?" We do that. So
whatever you need, we can put up. We're into sharing. That's why I said to Barbara, this is such a good opportunity. Whatever we've done, we've made so many mistakes. Why should you make them? You know, we made them. We took corrective measures, and you're going to do things differently from us because it doesn't quite fit your institution. But there's a place to start with the best practices. Yes.
it's kind of two questions. So you're saying that the students take developmental courses at the community college. How did you get, I'm assuming they're not taking credit-bearing courses at the community college. How did you get the community college to buy into a program that basically we're sending the students away from us?
Because they got money to support their operation. So the money that they got for their tutoring operation in particular, they used for all students.
Where did the
not
money come
just
from?
From my grants.
Oh, your grants.
From my resources. So yes, that's a good question. So they didn't, you know, you're talking about only, and that first cohort was only 12 people. So it wasn't like they were gonna lose so many students. And their interest was really to build a bridge to Eastern so that students could transfer. They were more interested in the bigger picture. And then they got, I forgot how much money it was. You remember, Stella?
For the Heart Foundation,
Yeah.
it was peanuts, it was like $30,000.
Yeah, they got $30,000 for just their tutoring operation. But that's a lot of money for people.
You got 35, you know, I don't know how much you gave them, it was very little money. You really started with the hope that would allow you to grow it, which you did.
Yeah.
She also wrote a book about it,
Hanging out and hanging on.
so it's a book, buy the book. The proceeds go to scholarships, so they don't go to Elsa, they go to scholarships.
I just have
It's
a
a beautiful book.
because I know in terms of, I noticed that in the initiative that you separated them and you placed them on campus. But how, were they disconnected from their familias, from their families?
Yes. And that was a major, that's for another workshop. That was a major problem because this is why these conversations are so important.
Yes.
I came from a family where my mother and father would have done anything for me to go to college, right? I mean, that was what I had that. These kids, for the most part, don't have that. What they have is a family who calls them for their financial aid check, and says, we gotta pay the rent, you gotta give us that money. Your book money is not your book money, we need food money. I had a student who said, my family's homeless, can they sleep in the dorms? And I said, no, your family cannot sleep in them. I mean, they are really, really, it's a different world. And so what we told them through counseling, and there was a lot of faculty involvement and staff involvement, was that right now they had to focus on themselves and then they could help their families. But they could not send their book money and their financial aid money to their families because they were gonna fail out. For the most part, the students came around to that, but it was hard for them. It was because they were getting a lot of pressure.
So FORPA was pretty good for that then?
Yes.
Because we do a lot of families, and you know, the families want to be involved, as we all know.
Yes,
But
we have orientation for the families and all of that.
with the project.
Yes, yes.
Did they all graduate?
Did they what?
All graduate?
No, not all. It's about a 77% graduation. But you know what's interesting? That they'll graduate. I know they'll graduate. They may have left Eastern, but the seed was planted. You know, one student in the first, this is funny, in the first year, he wouldn't go to class, and it was the first, it was either the first or second cohort, I think it was the second cohort. And I meet on these students, and I got up one day and I said, give me my coat. I took my coat, I went to the dorms, knocked on the door. And he got up, I said, pack your things, you're going home. And he said, what? I said, pack your stuff, you're going home. He said, right now? I said, yeah, right now. I got a car waiting for you going back to Harvard. He said, what am I going to tell my mother? I said, that's your problem. And that was it. He left. And it was the hardest thing I had to do. But word went out like wildfire on campus. If you're in this program, she'll send you home. And it was the right thing to do. I'm sure he'll graduate, and I'm sure he'll live to regret what he did. But he was sleeping. You can't have a program where your resources, you're putting faculty and staff resources, and somebody's just, no, you gotta stop that, because they talk, and then they know that, the program is not as demanding, so not everybody graduated. Yes.
I'm interested in the Ford tax. What's the difference between the percentage of resource allocation and graduation rates? So how much do you invest in the highest risk TAC to get the graduation rate for that group?
Too much. In other words, the cost of graduating a student in TAC 1 is twice as much as graduating a student in TAC 4.
Right.
That's huge for us.
Which is one of the-
That's why I can't place everybody in TAC 1. That's what I was trying to say earlier, that institutions make the mistake of giving everybody everything, and that you can't do that because it's too expensive. But once you find out who actually needs those resources, you can limit the amount of money you allocate to it. And the truth of the matter is that the students in TAC 4 were very happy just to meet with their faculty members. They were happy to belong to a club or organization. The things that don't cost me anything extra were the retention.
So it was TAC 2 that had the conversion?
Yes.
I think nobody dares to say to you that we have to move on.
But
No, I know.